let's go right to the phones. Victor Riches, head honcho. He is the president, CEO, in these days, maybe janitor over at the Goldwater Institute. What's up, Vic?
Hey, well, thank you very much for having me on. And yeah, these are crazy times we're living in. No doubt about it.
We've had Mr. Sandifer on the show many times, especially with the fun you guys are engaging with the not-so-great Pima County government down here. So we always appreciate having Tim on the show, and also the lovely Mrs. Sandifer has been on the show too. You guys have a big event coming up, October 16th. You're doing the virtual annual dinner with one of our favorites and past guest on the show, of course, Dennis Prager. So tell us how a virtual dinner with Dennis Prager is working.
For sure. Well, it's going to be a lot of fun, and as you can imagine, under more normal circumstances, we'd be doing the dinner live, and we do it every year. Usually, we have about 600 people doing it live. Because of circumstances now, we're going to do it virtually, but it is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to have Dennis Prager on, and not only Dennis Prager, but your next guest, a very, very good friend of mine whom I've known for 20 years, and of course the leader of the Freedom Caucus back in D.C., Congressman Andy Biggs, is also going to be there. And I do want to stress, especially knowing that the congressman's going to be on here in a little bit, we are very, very lucky in this state to have Congressman Biggs representing us back in D.C., and I just cannot stress how proud I am to have watched him in a very short amount of time become one of the more influential people back in D.C., and I do think that when the time comes where Republicans retake the House of Representatives, I think he'll be a front runner for Speaker of the House.
I think Andy, especially in 2020, has catapulted himself to the rock star Republican in the state of Arizona right now.
Absolutely, and I'll tell you, at the annual dinner, I like to stress that it is going to be a lot of fun, but we're certainly going to be discussing some extremely serious issues, the future of our country, and this advent of socialism from the hard left. And one of the things I do like to remind people is it's not just happening back in D.C. It's not just at the federal level. We all think about the Green New Deal and the socialization of health care, these efforts to take away private health insurance. And as horrible as those things are, we're also seeing these types of things happen, or at least being attempted to happen right here in our own backyard. And I would say at the forefront of those issues is, I know an issue you guys are extremely familiar with, and it is the Prop 208, which is going to be on the ballot this November. It is a very clear effort to take a major first step in socializing the economy in the state of Arizona, the biggest tax increase that this state would have ever seen. And well, something like this, of course, would be bad during even positive times. When we're experiencing this sort of recessionary period, it would be disastrous. And I always like to remind people, the proponents of this try to pretend like this is some kind of millionaire's tax. The reality is 60% of it would be on the backs of small businesses. And, of course,
Sure.
they define millionaire as people making $250,000. So they dumb down the definition of millionaire. They significantly impact our small business community. And it's also being funded almost exclusively from extreme left efforts that are well outside of Arizona. So people that are never going to have to live with the ramifications of this measure are the ones actually promoting it right here in our own state.
Victor, I've been doing presentations to various groups of small business owners about this one in 207. And when I say, is there anyone here? Remember, it's a $250,000 gross revenue if you're a LLC that floats down to your personal return. And then all of a sudden they start to go, oh, crap, that's me.
Yeah, exactly. It would literally decimate the small business community. And I'll tell you, we did a very in-depth report on the ramifications of 208. In fact, the only detailed report, and some of the things that we discovered is we're literally, and this is just at the state level, the state would lose well over $120 million a year. If this were to pass, we'd lose hundreds of thousands of jobs over the years. And as I mentioned, the bulk of it would fall right on the shoulders of the small business community. And that's not even to consider the very real possibility that we've seen in California, New York, and other high tax states where people literally leave. I mean, people literally leave these states. And so the relatively positive economy that we've seen over the last decade would eviscerate in a matter of moments if something like this were to pass.
Victor, can I put you on hold for some commercials so we could talk a little bit more about your event? And I have another couple of questions that I want to ask you. Is that okay?
Absolutely.
All right. So first of all, this event with Dennis Prager, and we love Dennis Prager. I mean, that's a great 1-2 punch, right? Prager and Biggs, that's a great night. 2020 virtual annual dinner, October 16th. You got to go to goldwaterinstitute.org to buy tickets. So real quick, Victor, before we go to break, how does it actually work? So that you're going to get you're basically getting a exclusive stream that you can watch wherever you're at. Is that how this is working?
Yes, that's exactly how it'll work. So everyone can enjoy it from the privacy of their home, but it's an exclusive stream, and we're actually doing it out of a studio. So I'm sure people have seen some events that maybe haven't looked quite as good as people were hoping for. This event's going to be very well done, and hearing from Dennis Prager, Congressman Biggs, and we'll also be showing a lot of the work that we've been doing at the Goldwater Institute. So I think people are really going to enjoy it.
All right, Victor, hold on for a few minutes, and we'll get back. I can't wait. A couple more things I want to get to you before we get to Congressman Biggs. We're on with Victor Riches. I'm going to say it right today, Goldwater Institute. Go to goldwaterinstitute.org to get your tickets to the virtual annual dinner with Dennis Prager. Thank you, Eduardo.
Eddie Van Halen.
There we go. 8:21 in the morning. Remembering Eddie Van Halen. Passed away a couple of days. We're hanging out with the Eddie Van Halen of Goldwater Institute,
Woo!
Victor Riches.
Dude.
Does that make sense for Alex Van
rocks.
Halen? That's what I want to know. Victor, welcome back, sir.
Thank you.
Hey, they got their great virtual dinner event. You know what you do is, of course, Wake Up Tucson on the DeSimone HQ side, I have 35 great local restaurants. So what you do is you go there first, pick up some great grub, and then you go back to your house, get your ticket at goldwaterinstitute.org, and participate in this wonderful event with Dennis Prager. Two of our favorites, Prager and Biggs. That's a great 1-2 punch. So, hey, I got a quick question for you. This is just pure timing, Victor. While you're here, I got to ask you this quick question, sir. The city of Tucson just voted on Tuesday that they're going to, the DoorDashes and Uber Eats. They're capping their commission that they can charge on doing a food delivery, which sounds like artificial price controls.
Yeah, there's no question, and it really is something that we're seeing more and more of across the country, where you have these local municipalities dramatically overreaching in terms of their power and trying to actually control what small businesses can do. So this would be an area, and I'll tell you, we haven't looked specifically into this at Goldwater Institute, but it's something we're going to be looking into, and I do think that this is the sort of thing where they've dramatically overstep their bounds. They have no business telling small businesses or large businesses, for that matter, how to conduct their business. And it's yet another example of elements of southern Arizona, but also across the state, doing things that they have absolutely no business in doing when it comes to telling our business community what kind of profits they can make and what kind of business models they can use. And I want to stress, this once again goes to Here we are in the middle of these challenging times with this pandemic, and what the business or what the government out there should be doing is figuring out how can we make life easier for small businesses, and instead they're doing everything possible to shut them down, and it's deeply offensive.
And the other thing, that we actually had a DoorDash driver reach out to us to tell us that basically, because it's for restaurants that are 5 units or less, because they're saying they're picking on the small business owner. Of course, and the DoorDash people get to choose what restaurants they deliver from. They'll just take all the small restaurants off of their list.
Well, absolutely. It's literally punishing the small business community, and I'll tell you, it's an inexplicable thing that's happening right now. We talked about Prop 208, talking about what they're doing with DoorDash. The small business community in this state really is the backbone of our economy, and it's true in every corner of the state. So the idea of doing things that would specifically harm the biggest element of our economy is crazy, and they should be ashamed of themselves for what they're doing, and that's definitely an issue that we're going to be looking into.
We're on with Victor Riches with the Goldwater Institute. They have a great event coming up on a week from Friday. It's the Evening with Dennis Prager and Congressman Andy Biggs, who's coming up in about 10 minutes with Congressman Biggs. Goldwaterinstitute.org. Go to events, and you can find it and get your tickets. Now, Victor, Prop 208, 207, right? One is going to, of course, be loosen up more on recreational marijuana. And then, of course, the education one where they're saying all these taxes are going to be raised and they're going to fix everything in our life, right? Roads, education. What do you see about the lack of handcuffs on the money in relation to it actually going to where these people say?
Well, that's one of the many problems with it is, when you look at their advertising campaign, these guys are talking about how this money is going to go to all these positive places. It's going to go to, with 208, it's going to go to teachers. And when you actually get into the details of it, most of the money will not end up in the classrooms. Most of it ends up in programs that have nothing to do with classroom learning, nothing to do with teacher pay. It's just another opportunity to give more money to administrators and really just give an open blank check to these school districts to do whatever they want. And as we've seen over the years, when you dump more and more money into K-12 without any restrictions on how it's supposed to be spent and any requirements that they do any sort of reforms of the way they're doing business, it simply never works. It's just dumping money into a black hole. And that's some of the big problems with these types of measures. And I also like to stress to folks, and I think a lot of people in the state don't realize this, these referendums cannot be changed. Once they're passed, these things are permanent. The only way they can ever be changed is with another ballot measure, which of course costs millions of dollars. So once this happens, the legislature can never go in and change it. The governor can never go in and change it. So the negative ramifications are functionally there forever. And that's one of the very nefarious things about these types of ideas.
So one last question for you. I'm going to ask you one of those big ones and give you 2 minutes before we run out of time to answer it. Sorry about that. And if we run out of time, remember goldwaterinstitute.com to get your and we got to get you on every month is what we got to start. .org, I apologize. Goldwaterinstitute.org. An Evening with Dennis Prager. So with what's going on with emergency orders, Victor, in this country, in the state, from the governor's office, and you see all these businesses suffering and a lot of restrictions of individual freedoms, where have you guys been on this? What are you guys working on to try to make things better for the individual and business owner that's still suffering under a lockdown?
For sure. Well, there's a couple of areas. Number one, I think that we need to rein in these types of emergency powers. And what had happened in Arizona and all across the country is basically after 9/11, legislatures passed measures to give the executive branch broad discretion in declaring emergencies. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that in the sense that if something happens immediately, whether it's a forest fire or something else, to be able to have an executive branch come in and act immediately. The problem is there's no time frame on these types of issues. And so I do think it's very important that these things have to be reevaluated by the legislature in a reasonable amount of time. And I'll give you an example of an issue.
We got about a minute, just to tell you.
Oh, sure. We actually had a pizza parlor that we were defending out in Fountain Hills, where this owner, and she was an immigrant, came over from Russia to escape this kind of nonsense. She comes over here. She's doing takeout only. She had customers that were then eating in a adjacent park, and Fountain Hills actually came in and was fining her, threatening to put her out of business. And so we went in, defended her. Fortunately, we won there. She's good to go. but these types of things are happening across the state and across the country by overzealous governments, and I think we need to reel in these types of powers.
Victor, it was so great talking to you today. Let's start doing this on a regular basis because there's a lot of meat on all of these bones, as we like to say.
Absolutely.
Hey, you got a great event coming up. It's Friday the 16th. Andy Biggs is coming up next, and Dennis Prager, the virtual 2020 virtual annual dinner with the Goldwater Institute. Victor, best of luck on your event, sir.
Hey, thank you, Chris.
All right, Congressman Andy Biggs coming up next.